Stop motion is our movie today. Do you remember the first stop motion movie you ever saw, Meg?
Ooh, probably one of those Christmas, like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer type.
Talk about horror. Just
Yeah.
kidding. So, we have some surprises in store for you today, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Yay.
Welcome to Horror Rewind. I'm Kelly Florence.
And I'm Meg Hofdahl, and we are two ghoulish chicks who love horror flicks.
After discovering our shared love of horror, we became lifelong best friends.
We love creating and discussing female-driven horror while also hexing the patriarchy.
But we also love a down and dirty slasher, too.
We are mothers, co-authors, screenplay writers, and we don't mind a little trashy TV.
So, welcome to Horror Rewind.
Join us and let's begin.
Welcome, everyone. If you are a subscriber to Shudder, you will have probably seen this movie that we're going to talk about today as our feature pop up in it as an advertisement. And if you are like us, you're intrigued, but you're not sure if you should dive in with anything.
Yes.
It's like, does the cover of a book, tell
Live
you
up
yeah.
to it.
Let me say, I think this is a 100% recommendation for
Oh
me.
my gosh.
You agree?
I'm obsessed. You texted me and said you're going to need your gore whore hat, but I
Yeah.
forgot it.
Oh.
That's when I know
Yeah.
I'm going to love it.
Yeah. It was delightful and surprising, and we're going to get into spoilers, friends. So if you have not seen it and don't want to know anything about it, fast forward a little bit into our fast forward or rewind segment. But stop motion. First of all, the art of stop motion, I can't imagine having the patience for it. It's like when Ben Wyatt on the Parks and Rec, he's like, could a depressed person make this? And it's literally like everything he's been doing, and the guy just stands up, and it's like 3 seconds of film.
I kept thinking about Ben Wyatt in Parks and Rec during this because he does it with that REM song.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's been like making this masterpiece of stop motion, and it's like 2 seconds
Yeah.
long. And he's like, that can't be all of it. And it is.
I know that it takes years
Yes.
to make a movie. I appreciate and love
yeah.
the art of stop motion. I just personally would not have the patience for it.
No, I think it takes a special type of person who can do, well, animation or like drawing cell by cell or stop motion, obviously, like this. And I think this movie is a really cool look into, the making of it.
Yeah.
I know there's a documentary out now about Jim Henson, who that's puppetry and things like that. But all of those kind of art forms, I think, are really interesting to express yourself. And right away, I could tell I was really going to enjoy this film because the aesthetic of the stop motion and the live action um, were both really intriguing to me right away.
Yeah.
And
Visually, it's like nothing I've ever seen before because of
yes,
how they were mixing these media.
right. And also, I was very intrigued by the mother-daughter relationship.
Yes.
Right off the bat, they're wearing matching outfits to create this stop motion film. And the mom is very, we're just going to say bitchy.
Yeah.
And critical and
Controlling
and her hands are not working. So the daughter is in control of the very minute movements that we know has to be done for these stop motion films, but actually seeing how it's done is like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how do people have the patience to
yeah.
do this? So right away we know, okay, this is toxic mom-daughter relationship.
And I was going to say it is a trigger warning because her mom, yes, she's a bitch, but it's abusive. Like,
Oh yeah.
even though she's physically can't abuse her,
Yeah.
mental and emotional
Oh, yeah.
abuse is just as abusive. And
Yeah.
and her deteriorating health could also be a trigger warning for people who are caring for somebody in deteriorating health.
Yeah.
But they do it very well. It's very well done.
Oh my gosh, and you can just see her, the daughter just sort of, like, herself
Yeah.
deteriorating, as she's doing this, and then she's going out and seeing these other creatives do what they wanna do, and she is basically an extension of her mother.
Yeah.
She's doing what her mother wants.
So interestingly, and I'm shout out to my mom, and she has said this publicly, so I'm not like revealing a dark family secret. But my mom said she always wanted to be a teacher, but her mom was a nurse and her mom wanted her to become a nurse. So she became a nurse,
Mhm,
but she didn't enjoy it. That wasn't her calling. And so she regrets not following her dreams.
mhm,
And well, I think I don't know about everybody, but I feel like a lot of people do get stuck doing what their parents want them to do or
mhm.
following in their parents' footsteps because they feel like they're obligated or
Oh,
taking over a
definitely.
family business.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we are very fortunate that neither of us got like stuck in a business or a career that we didn't want
Right,
to be in. But can you
right.
imagine?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think that for a lot of men that happens and women. I think that men get stuck in like family businesses and things like that. And I think women get stuck in like traditions of like, yeah, nurses, teachers, things like that. And I think that the actual um it was interesting with the stop motion film that she was doing was having this cyclops with one eye, so like it can only focus on one thing. It was like um very on the nose there. um Looking at itself and its future
Yeah.
of what was gonna happen, and that's what she was doing. She was seeing her future of, like, this bitter old woman, like, who everyone says is talented and great, but actually seemed very
Yeah.
unhappy, and, she was seeing her future of what was gonna happen to her.
And I wrote down this quote. It's like I think it's when she meets the child.
Yeah.
She said about stop motion, the art of it. She said, "I'm good at it. I
Yep.
like it."
Yep.
And I thought about how many things can we as human beings be good at?
Right.
Just because we're good at something doesn't mean we should have to do it for the rest of our lives or be
Right.
stuck in it.
Right.
It's like I won't give examples, but
Yeah.
we might be
Yeah.
good at a lot of things, and
Right. Yeah.
yet we have to. I know we can't all, but I wish for all of us to be able to follow our dreams.
Well, and I think Luke was telling me he was listening to this book about like what your actual passion is, and we all think like our we know what our passion is when we're 18, but we sometimes we actually don't know what it is until we're older, and we like kind of like have to go through the world and
Yeah,
like figure it out and like go through some jobs and like go through some shit.
yeah,
Like we have to like sometimes we think, "Oh, our passion is like what we love right now when we're 12." But sometimes you have to like be in the world for a
yeah.
while. And like she grew up doing this with her mom forever, and it's
Right.
like she hasn't even got to like experience art in other forms
Yeah,
yet or
and
like,
that's what I love about this moment. So the girl says, like, Make a new one, like, do
yeah.
it, like,
Yeah.
change it."
Yeah.
And it's like giving permission to be her own creative self for the
Right.
first
For the
time,
very
maybe,
first time. Yeah, I think
and
so.
it's
Yeah.
so profound. And then, I was taking notes like, is this her childhood voice? And
Right.
it's
Right.
we'll talk about it, but at this moment, I'm like, is this a ghost? Is this her inner self? Is
Right.
this who
Yeah.
is it? And it was well done so that it wasn't obvious. It wasn't like, oh well, we
Yeah.
know what this is going to be. I
Yeah.
thought it was
Yeah.
very well written and well acted.
Yeah, I did too, and I think that I wrote down the balance of surreal and real was really good
Yeah,
for me because there's obviously, like, loss of time, which I always
that's so scary. That has to be
it's
one of the
so
scariest.
scary. It's
And
oh,
not knowing if you can believe your own thoughts
exactly.
or memories.
I love when she wakes up and, like, she's torn things apart and,
Yeah,
like, things are, like, ruined, and
destroyed. Yeah,
yeah, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, like, did I do that? Like, what's happened?" And really she needs to deconstruct this. She's been under her mother's thumb for so long. She actually leaves the physical place that her mother's been at. That she's lived in this like farm or something with her
Yeah.
mother, and she leaves and needs to like
Have her own create her
have
own space.
her own space. And I think after like the first or second time with the girl, I'm like, okay, the girl's definitely not real.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, is it her as a child? Is it her sort of id?
Yeah.
Is it her like creative self? And I think there is something to be said about like our creative selves are children in a way, because that is like it's
It's that
tapping
innocence
into,
and
yeah,
imagination that
mhm,
people haven't been able to
play.
tamp down.
Exactly. It's that playful part of us, but also that sort of like dark side of us too, like, which is kind of like, we were talking a while back, I think on our Patreon show about hypnosis, and like not to get too dark, but when later in this film when she goes really like really dark,
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I'm afraid of
Yeah.
hypnosis. Like if you hypnotize me, maybe I will just go so dark, like maybe this is how dark I'll go. Like,
Yeah.
that's my fear of hypnosis.
So I'm going to interject some humor into this.
Okay.
So this one of my favorite radio shows that I listen to, the guy said that the last time he was on a cruise, he volunteered to get hypnotized, and he was saying all of the things that he was doing. And his co-host is like, "Oh my God, were you really hypnotized?" And he's like, "Donna, I was medically drunk." So he was pretending to be hypnotized. So
Okay.
that made me feel better. Like, I think a lot of people
Just
hopefully maybe
pretend,
go along with it.
cluck like a
But he's like,
chicken
yeah,
and
yeah. But he was like, no, they find the drunk people. And because then you're like
okay.
suggestible.
I feel like maybe
I
I
don't know.
would just push somebody downstairs if, like, I was hypnotized, you know what I mean?
No, it's very scary. That's why, yeah, I'm not going to do it.
Because it's like her id is like the
Destroy.
yeah, it's like, maybe I do just wanna, like, kill a fucker.
You know what would be okay? What if if you were hypnotized,
Yeah.
you know how I would know that it wasn't you?
What?
If you were sitting cross-legged in your library tearing pages out of
Well,
books
there you go,
with
see?
just like a
Ruining
dead look on
books.
your face.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Ruining
scary.
books. Ruining
And like you're
books.
throwing them into like a garbage can fire.
Eating raw mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's how you know.
Oh my God, that would be scary. Okay, how would
Yeah.
you know that I have been fully taken over?
Um, yeah, I mean, probably eating steak and
Just like, yeah, raw meat.
raw meat and like
Deleting all the Bo
deleting Bo
Burnham,
Burnham. Yeah, I was gonna say something about Bo Burnham. Like you're like
deleting every Bo Burnham album off my
yeah,
phone.
yeah. You're like, fuck Bo Burnham. I hate
Wow.
him. I hate him. You're like leaving voice messages to him somehow. I don't know that you don't like him.
No, that would never happen. Okay, so if that happens,
Okay, then
y'all
we
know
know.
I've been taken over by the
But
Ash Man, not the Ash Man, but that's in
yeah,
this
yeah,
movie.
yes,
Also, we
yes.
need to do a trigger warning. There is a dead animal alert. R.I.P. to
Yeah,
a fox.
I know, Baba. No.
I know that we feel more empathy and sympathy for dead animals, but it gets me. I feel like
I
these are,
know.
I know that they're not
I
really
did
killing
like
animals,
I
but
did like sort of the like creative.
oh, that she was able to, yeah.
Yeah, I do like finding dead animals. We did like in our books talk to people who
Oh yeah, we
use.
talked to a
Yeah,
taxidermist.
we do like talk to people who use like bones and things like that for like creative, you know, pursuits. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate people who find dead bodies of animals
Thank you for clarifying.
or people.
Guess what? No, that's gonna be played in court. They're gonna just whoop clip, take
Yeah,
that
I
clip.
know. Me saying like, I'm afraid I'm gonna push somebody down the stairs.
I might murder a man. I appreciate people who find dead bodies of animals. Okay, I've been
Um,
implicated now because I was
yeah.
repeating it.
So
Okay.
it's fine. It's fine. We'll be in jail together. It'll be fun.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we'll share a cell. It'll be great.
Maybe we're there
Check
now.
out. Yeah, maybe we are.
Okay.
They set up like cans that we think are microphones, and we're actually just,
Probably.
like, in a padded cell right now.
Probably. This stop motion probably doesn't even exist.
I was gonna say I love when she's tripping, which maybe we are
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's such
But she's not even tripping, remember?
yeah, but it's creepy and slow-mo,
Yeah.
and you just think, like,
And there's the marionette or
the
the
bit like, I said dummy, but yeah,
dummy, which again is like an allegory, kind of like she was her mom's dummy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing an Eddie Redmayne, cabaret bit because he's marionetting
Oh,
as the
yes.
MC. Anyway,
Yes, yes, yes. But people need to watch on YouTube so they can see your.
there you go. See, if you're only listening right
I
now, you're
know
missing
you're
out on these
missing out on
visuals.
so much. Well, and I feel like really overall the whole film was about the creative process
Absolutely.
and about like creativity. I love it was really bitchy, but actually it ends up being great because the sister-in-law ends up I say sister-in-law, she's not technically married to the guy, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like her boyfriend's sister. She ends up being a bitch who stole her idea anyway.
Yeah.
So, but she's like, if I had to like do what you do, like I'd kill myself.
Yeah.
Um, because she has this very and she says things like that to her boyfriend too. But she has this very bristly view of like a conventional life because she's seen her mom live a very artistic life. But let's remember her mom is a very unhappy person.
Yeah, she is not definitely not finding joy in her art.
No. So I find it interesting that she's like, okay, I want to live this artistic life, but she is obviously having a breakdown.
Yeah.
And her boyfriend and her boyfriend's sister are obviously living a more balanced life. I'm not saying they have it all figured
Right.
out, but she wants to live in this artistic bubble, which don't many of us. I mean, yeah, I get it. I want to live in that world too. Um but she's very turned off by the idea of living any sort of conventional life. But again, what what appeals to her about her mother's life?
I know.
So it's very
And
interesting.
it's almost like, well, probably she was kind of brainwashed and trained and
Mhm.
groomed to be
Mhm.
this person that her mother
Mhm.
needed her or wanted her to be.
Mhm.
And so she has to discover who she is.
Right.
I have to go back to the dummy for a second
Okay.
and tell you when I was in third grade, I requested a Charlie McCarthy ventriloquist dummy
Yeah.
and I got it for
Okay.
Christmas.
Oh,
And like
did you
everybody who
learn?
came over, no, but everybody, I just thought it was creepy and cool. And like
Yeah.
I would always like prop it up and stuff. And people were like, why do you have that? And I'm like, it's awesome. So I think you would have appreciated it if you had
Oh,
known me in
yeah.
third grade
Oh, I
that I had
would've.
like this dummy,
Oh,
like
no, I would've wanted to
peeking around
play.
corners at people
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh, definitely. I would've been like, "Invite me over."
I wish I still had him. He would be sitting here right now. Maybe he is.
Oh,
Woo.
maybe he is. I wonder whatever happened to him.
I think like I sold him at a rummage sale or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, I would have definitely wanted to come over and play with him. Yeah.
Anyway, so
I would have
RIP to that.
I would have wanted to play like Twilight Zone with him,
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know?
I loved it.
You know what movie I almost started watching? I didn't have time, but there's that Anthony Hopkins movie, Magic. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
no, but
It's like a killer dummy movie.
very
So we
cool.
need to watch
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Okay, the lighting in this movie, the pulsing lighting,
mhm.
it's so
Mhm.
effective.
Mhm.
I mean, the soundtrack is great.
Mhm.
Everything just drew me in.
And the stop motion, if we just look at the stop motion itself as like the Ash Man and then um the meat woman, the meat little girl, and how the Ash Man's coming one night and then
Oh
the
my
second
god.
night, and then she tries to stop it, and then that ends up making things worse, and how she's sort of like um she goes into this sort of coffin-like place. It's so very
Yeah.
surreal, but then we kind of get kicked out into that real world again where things are so real, where she's in a coffee shop and she's in like just these very real grounded places that feel so um uh kind of austere and, like, icky, and you can understand why she doesn't even wanna be in that world
Right.
either, and it's like her boyfriend just, like, is a dum dum and doesn't get anything that's going
Well, and
on.
I made a note of, did you notice the sound effect? It was like a squeaking sound every time someone was adjusted, and it was just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's so unsettling, and it's just like, "Ugh."
Yeah, it's done every little thing is done so, with such subtle doll movement, subtle, and again, that's control, right?
Yeah.
She's a doll in her mom's world. She was just as malleable as those dolls in her mother's world, and she was controlled with that. And so when she finally has time to have any control over anything, it kind of all goes to shit because finally she has the chance to be creative, but now that she does, it's sort of like she doesn't even know where to, like,
What her outlet should be.
yeah, what her outlet should
So
be.
this is when I texted you, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "The gore, the
Yeah.
brutal murders." Like, I'm not saying, like, I love murder, but I
Yeah.
love the special
Oh,
effects in this movie,
obviously.
and I knew that you would
I
appreciate
mean, I
it.
think we love murder in movies,
Well,
don't we?
yeah,
I
we
think we've
do.
established
Not
that.
IRL. And so this was so
Oh my
well
god.
done, and, like, what an epic climax.
Oh my god. It should be noted, the again, if we're doing trigger warnings, the pain she's doing to herself.
Yeah, yeah.
She's cutting herself. She's when she's doing it's so again, if we're getting down to, like, the sort of very patient little movements, she's taking stitches out of her own leg, which, when you're watching a shark movie, you're watching, like, somebody's head get cut off, like,
Yeah.
bitten off, but this is such small little gore that makes you squirm in your
And
seat,
and
you
you can
know?
actually picture it happening to you because it's more real,
Ow,
you
yeah,
know?
it's like taking your own stitches out, and she's, like, getting out a piece of her flesh out
Yeah.
of it. Ouch,
I know,
ouch,
I know.
ouch, and she's, like, making herself, like, faint, so she's
Yeah.
taking away her consciousness. Actually, that happens several times throughout the film
Yeah.
where she's taking her consciousness away, or it's being taken away from her, and then she's waking up, and again, that loss of consciousness, again, like we said, is so scary because things are happening, and the film seems to be happening without her knowledge, which
Yeah.
is, again, like, you can't trust your own self, which is
That I think that is the most terrifying thing of
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah, it's,
Yoink.
yeah.
Do you wanna rank this movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so stop motion on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie, what should our scale be?
Mm. Um, I think that's tough. I think that it should be um the strip of her, like, self that she took out.
Oh. Skin strips. Okay, how many skin strips do you
I give
give
it
stop
10
motion?
because I just felt so resplendent watching it because um the not to get too therapized here, but the toxic mom and daughter relationship obviously resonated with me. Um and the balance, oh, her mom called her Poppet,
Yep.
which was like, I mean,
Again, on the nose, yet
yet so,
subtle.
yeah, it was so the ending, there were certain things that, like, didn't necessarily make 100% sense to me, but that's why I loved it because it
Well, and
was
also because we are only given bits and pieces
right.
of what is truth, what is
Right,
yeah.
right. So I love, like, give me an ambiguous ending that I get to, like, sort of puzzle out in my mind, and like it felt very, like, again, it felt like she was appeasing to her mother at the end, and she didn't know how to, like, really fully bloom as herself even though she really wanted to.
I
And to
know.
me, that is reality.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the
yes,
tragedy
we
of
that's the
reality.
tragedy, like, we wanna see her, like, fully make the thing that she fully wants, and I think she kind of did in a demented sort of way, but also she still wanted to appease her mother, which is like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
that sucks,
I
you know?
know. I love it.
But,
I love
yeah,
it.
so I give it 10, I
I'm giving it
loved it.
also 10 strips of flesh
Yeah.
because It was so good, and I went into it like I didn't know. I saw it on there, and I'm like, "Maybe we'll give this a try."
Yeah.
But they got me in,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
kept me
Yeah.
the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
You know it's a good movie because we just gushed about it, but you
Yeah.
especially know it's good because the only time I picked up my phone was to say, "Bring your gore whore
Yeah.
hat."
Yes. Um, I did do a little, like, research. The guy who made it, Robert Morgan, this is his first, um, film, full-length film. He obviously it probably wouldn't surprise anybody that he all his movies before this were stop-motion films. Um, and his influences are Poe, David Lynch, and David Cronenberg, which all make sense. So if we didn't sell you on it, maybe those influences will sell you on it. And the actress, it's her name is pronounced Ashling Francoise. She was in The Nightingale, which I know you didn't like.
Yeah. Just
And
because
I
it's
didn't
yeah,
watch,
it's got
so
some sexual assault things
that you
that
just
yeah.
didn't feel like really were didn't nail it, so to speak. Um, she is going to be in Speak No Evil with James McAvoy, and that's an American film coming out September 13th, and it looked interesting. So,
You had me at
I
James
I
McAvoy.
know, and he looks kind of good on the poster for it. So, I think he's a bad boy in it, but
Ooh.
anyway,
We've
yeah.
said this before, but all he has to do is go like this, and Meg and I are the
We're
gif of
doing
him going like
well,
this.
and I have to describe what you're doing for
Oh,
listeners.
yes, yes, sorry.
She's putting her fingers to her temple
Like he
from
does in
X-Men,
X-Men.
and because he just like he could do that and do sexual things.
And then, like, there's the gif of him, like, fanning himself, you know?
Oh,
I'm
the
saying
hot
then we are that gif
yeah,
because
then
it's
we're
just
that
like,
gif.
whoo.
Yeah, James McAvoy is a treasure. Um, and he's a very good actor. I will give
No, he is.
in Split. He's not hot in Split, but he's a very good actor. I will give him that. Um, and yeah, he's a treasure to everyone, isn't he? But back to Ashling. She was very good in this. And I hope to see more of her. And I hope to see more Robert Morgan films. And I'd love to see him do stop motion and live action again.
I love the
You know,
putting them together, yeah.
yeah, I would love to see. I'm sure he's like exhausted from
Yeah,
making this movie, but I would love to see the mashup again. That would be really cool.
I agree. We're going to rewind it now.
All right, that's
And
you,
I
girl.
I'm not gonna show it to you live on this podcast right now, but we will
Okay.
link it for everyone to watch. I was researching like live action horror, sorry, stop motion horror, um, and history of it and films that have come out. And we all know, like we of course love Nightmare Before Christmas and Frankenweenie and Paranorman and all of
Mhm.
those. We Corpse Bride. We know and love all that. But I'm like, let's go back a little further. Let's rewind.
Okay.
There is this movie from 1988. It's not that long ago,
Mhm.
but it's called Alice.
Okay.
And the trailer is terrifying. It is, of course, based on Alice in Wonderland, which I know,
Oh,
admittedly,
okay.
neither of us are huge Alice in Wonderland stans. You
No.
know,
No.
it's not just
I
like,
never watched the Tim Burton one, which is
I,
like
and I did, and it's
I
good.
should
Yeah, you'll
because I love
appreciate it.
Tim Burton.
But, you know, some people are so obsessed with everything Alice in Wonderland,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
neither of us ever
No,
were. Like,
I
I
guess
mean,
not.
you know,
No. Yeah.
it's fine. But I they have, of course, the Mad Hatter in this trailer, and it got me thinking about the character and what it's really based on and why
Yeah.
we say Mad as a Hatter. And so
Yeah.
just talking a little science as science girlies,
Yeah.
it's the expression comes from the 1800s when hat makers were using chemicals to make their felt hats and shape them, and it caused tremors and irrational behaviors. Years later, they
Oh
realized it
god.
was mercury poisoning,
Oh, yeah.
but that's why it was like every
Mad as a
hatter was mad. It's like, oh, they're mad as a
Oh.
hatter, the Mad Hatter. So literally, their profession. Speaking of like doing this as a profession, like she took it
Yeah.
from her mother in stop motion.
Yeah.
You're making hats because your dad did, and now you're mad.
Like, aren't you glad you live now?
Yes.
Like, think of all like, Uh, the Radium Girls,
Yeah,
like, I read that book and then I've seen, the play, and it's like they literally died because of their job.
yeah,
And there are so many people who've been exposed to, I mean, think of all the mesothelioma commercials we've
yeah.
seen. Like, just all the things that we don't know about science and the chemicals we're being exposed
And
to.
I know we haven't talked about it yet on the Patreon, but there's talking about chemicals, or maybe we have because I don't know when you're listening to this, but chemicals that the government has used just for testing
Oh my
and
gosh.
for, maybe trying to do some good by eradicating a pest, but
Oh,
really
yeah.
it's making people and nature all
Yeah.
messed up.
Good
Like, that's
point.
scary stuff. And that really happened. Like, that really
Yeah. Yeah.
happens, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be happening right now
It
to
could be.
us.
So I wanted to mention that, and then I know that this isn't I don't know if it's available, but the other fast forward that I wanted to talk about was something that I had the privilege of programming at the Minnesota Film Festival this year, and it was called Malikout, by a filmmaker called Fornoosh Abedi, and it is if you remember this one, it's the stop motion movie.
I'm trying to
It was
remember.
the one that I opened the block with, and it had, like, Vincent Price vibes and, like, Bride of
Oh,
Frankenstein
yeah, that
vibes,
was so
and it's a
cool.
short horror film. It's stop motion, though, and it's was so impressive, like, every aspect. You could just tell
Yeah.
they were a horror fan,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they did such a good job, and so I will link it if it's available to watch
Yeah.
maybe on Vimeo, but support local film festivals and international ones, but the Minnesota Film Festival here in Duluth, Minnesota, is, run by Zeitgeist, a nonprofit, and it does such a good job of uplifting diverse voices and um, local and small community filmmakers that may not have a chance to, show at Cannes or Sundance or Tribeca. And so
Yeah.
there were a lot, and you didn't see them all. There were a lot of animation and stop motion um, submissions this year, and there's so many talented people out there. And I had the opportunity to program a horror stop motion, which is like
Yeah.
what a dream.
It was so well done, and now after seeing this stop motion horror film, I feel like I appreciate, I've always known
No,
obviously,
of
but
course,
seeing this now, I feel like I appreciate the work that goes into it even more.
definitely.
Um And yeah, I hope that you can link, I hope we can get
Yeah.
people's eyes on the one you just
I'll be able
mentioned.
to at least, let you see some still photos from it or a
Yeah,
trailer.
because it was beautifully done. It's very
Yeah.
gothic.
Yeah.
I love that
It's very
one.
gothic horror. So I didn't mean to hijack the
Yes.
fast forward, but I had to mention that
Yeah,
because
no,
it
that's
was it was so good.
it was so good. And I agree that um the short form of, I'm a huge fan of short form uh horror literature.
Yeah.
And so short form horror films.
You can tell a scary
Oh
story
yeah.
in a shorter period of
Oh
time.
my gosh, yes. So, like, going to local film festivals and seeing short horror films, they're such a delight.
Yeah.
And, not everyone's gonna be your cup of tea, but it's over in 10 minutes, so
Yeah.
it's okay. So, yeah, that's great.
We're so glad that you're listening and watching Horror Rewind. We want to make sure that you are letting others know about our show and making sure that you're leaving us a 5-star review.
And if you feel like writing a written review, we would love that because we'll choose some to read on air on Horror Rewind.
We really appreciate you being here and listening to Horror Rewind. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So is it fast forward time?
Yes.
Okay. So I didn't watch a stop motion, but I did want to do an animated
Yeah.
horror film. And by the way, I wanted to talk about, we never figured this out. So I figure, why don't we figure this out on air?
Okay, great.
What qualifies fast forward and horror rewind by year?
I don't know. I think just
Like,
past.
but like how far past is a horror rewind?
Well,
You know?
I actually wrote this down. I didn't watch it, but I was going to mention apparently a well reviewed Rewind. It's 2022, which isn't that long
That's
ago, but
not
that's 2
Rewind.
years ago,
No.
called Mad God, and then I decided not to
Oh,
talk about it because 'cause
okay.
I'm like, "That doesn't seem old enough."
I think so. I was talking to Luke, and he said 10
Okay.
years. Like in the last 10 years should be still fast forward.
Or Rewind.
No, still fast forward.
Oh, okay.
Don't you think?
Oh, yeah,
And then
more than 10 years should be Rewind.
more than
Yeah,
10 years should be
yeah.
rewind, because so my point being that my point being is that this movie's from 2016,
Okay.
but I'm saying it's a fast forward.
Wow! No,
Well,
that's
don't you
good. It
think?
no,
I
it
mean,
qualifies. I'm just kidding.
because like a horror rewind to me usually I feel like is like 80s,
Yeah, yeah.
90s, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
What do y'all think? I feel like,
We'll have a poll. We'll put a
we'll
poll
put a
here on
poll.
Spotify.
So I'm considering this as fast forward because it's 2016, but whatever. So this is available on Tubi, and I love doing things on Tubi because it's free. As many things as I can do on Tubi, then I know y'all can like watch it because there's so many
Oh
freaking
my gosh.
things, you know.
Yeah. We all thought we were smart when we were cutting our cable, which we haven't, by the way. And it
Yeah,
turned out to probably be a good move because now everyone's paying like triple
I
to get all
know.
the streamers.
I
Anyway.
saw a TikTok where people were like making fun of like streaming, and they're like, it's on like the Bisquick,
Yeah, the
you know?
Bisquick app.
Yeah. Okay, so I watch, and I don't know if you've seen it. It's a prequel to Train to Busan,
Mm-mm.
but it's animated. So
Cool.
Train to Busan is one of my
Yeah.
favorite zombie
We love that movie.
films. So it's called Soul Station.
Oh, I know of this. I have not watched it.
Yeah, so it was made in 2016. I think it came out maybe a year later in the States, but it's made by the same filmmaker, Yun Sang Ho, who made Train to Busan. Um, and yeah, they decided to make it animated, which is kind of interesting. And so it takes place shortly before Train to Busan. Um, and the animation is really well done. It's
Is the
emotional.
is the
Yep.
blood really vivid?
I mean, sure,
Okay.
yeah,
I
the
just wonder
blood
like
yeah, I mean,
what sort of style of animation is it? Is it very like
um, n no, I mean, it's I'm trying to, like, compare it. I mean, it's probably very similar. I know Vienna is really into, like, the
anime? Yeah,
anime.
I've been watching a lot of anime with her, so that's why
Yeah,
I'm
it's
what I'm
probably
wondering.
similar, maybe a little more, like, grounded in reality, I'm
Okay.
guessing. I mean, it's very, like, realistic. So, um, they're kind of 3 main characters. Yu is a father who is looking for his daughter who has run away from home, and has become a sex worker. And then her name's Hee Seon, and then Hee Sun, and then Ki Yuang is her boyfriend, who is trying to now pimp her out on the street. And the problem is, like, he's trying to pimp her out, and he is abusive. And so, other than her, like, there's no one really to like, obviously. um, I shouldn't say that actually, because there are some characters in the beginning who get killed off pretty early on who are likable. Um, but her father and her boyfriend are not likable. Um, but she is like relying on her boyfriend, and so they kind of try to make him likable, and you're like, no, I just saw her, like, he just slapped her. So it's kind of like tough because they're trying to make him likable in some sense, and you're like, "No, I still remember when he slapped her," and, like, so they're trying to, like, make you forget that, so
Yeah.
you're like, no, I want him to be eaten by a zombie," but, like, he's still living and living and living, and you're like, "When's he gonna be eaten by a zombie?" Like, so there was kind of that, situation. Um, so there's a lot of good parts to it, I will say. What I will tell you, well, okay. It's similar in the sense, like, when we were talking in the last episode, about the film Infested, it kinda has a similar, allegory to sort of homeless versus or unhoused versus rich, where the government and the police and people who are of like higher socioeconomic value, they believe that this is something that was caused by the unhoused people, because the first person who comes up bitten is an unhoused man. And so there's like that kind of struggle going on.
Yeah.
So that kind of made for an interesting um fight among people who are not bit yet. And then there's a twist about kind of the identity of one person, which is interesting. What I will tell you is now the end of Train to Busan, as you remember, is extremely emotional. I cry
Yeah.
every time I see that movie,
Yep.
I cry. Um, in contrast, this movie is so bleak,
Oh.
so dark, so hopeless that you're just like, okay. You're just kind of like, oh, okay. You just kind of feel like, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
just like, wow, that's dark.
I I know that this is probably established by what you've been saying, but
Yeah.
tell everyone what it's rated, because sometimes people assume if it's animated, it's for kids.
I know, and that's the funny thing is that so I was watching it by myself. I didn't write down what it was rated.
I'm assuming it's R?
It must be because there is like I was watching it by myself, and then I made dinner for the kids, and Dexter, who's 13, was having dinner, and I figured I would just let it like go. And then there's like an attempted rape
Oh,
scene, and I
lord.
was like, I thought it would be like okay, and I was like, oh my, I like didn't know like that would happen, and because I think I know like when I was growing up and my mom like saw that I was watching The Simpsons, she was like, wait, like even The Simpsons to
It's not
her
for
was like,
kids.
"Yeah, wait a minute, like, this is animated, like, how are they making jokes like this?" So, yeah, I think sometimes it can be like, "Wait a minute, how is it this dark and, like, this pitch black dark?" So, it is definitely, like, e even darker than Train to Busan for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. So that being said, um there is a movie that came after the 2 called Peninsula, which I have not seen. It is live action, so this was the only one that was animated, which I don't know, is an interesting choice
Yeah.
that they did that. Um, they came out in 2020. It's not as favorably reviewed as the other 2. Um, and yeah, it's live action and it takes place 4 years after Train to Busan. It does not have any characters from Train to Busan in it. Um, and I don't know, I don't usually like movies that take place I don't know about you, but I don't usually like films that take place that many years after a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
I usually tend to like it when it's happening like right at this moment. I mean that's a large sweeping statement, but that's usually how I like them. Um I liked Soul Station, but I felt like there were kind of some long boring pieces. I felt like it was a little too dark for my taste, a little too hopeless. That's kinda how I
Yeah.
felt about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
No offense, but I'm not gonna rush out and
Yeah.
watch it.
It was interesting to see it in the same universe as Train to
Yeah.
Busan. It does kinda have a feminist feeling ending, I will say. Um Which I did appreciate, but it just kinda made me feel like, it was one of those movies where you felt the end kinda bummed, kinda
Yeah.
just like, "Okay.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
get it.
Mhm. Yeah."
Well, on that note, I'm gonna talk about a special feature, which is not horror related. It's horror adjacent.
Mhm.
We watched this documentary called How to Rob a Bank. Did you watch it
Oh, you
yet?
told me, you said you watched this, all you said, but no, I haven't watched it. Mm-mm.
And I'm like, well, whatever. It was fascinating though, because it was all about this man who figured out like, the right way to get his crew together and rob banks, and it wasn't for that much money ever,
Okay.
but it was enough to make a living, and he lived in a tree house, which was,
Okay.
like,
I
decked
like
out,
this.
and the characters in Point Break well, one of the characters is based on him in real life.
S What's the era? Like,
It's,
what?
like, 70s.
Okay.
So, I won't give it a everything away, because I think everyone should watch it. It's like an hour and a half documentary on Netflix, and they do such a good job. I mean, every Netflix show does a good job. Every show does a good job of, like, doing these recreations versus real footage versus,
Mhm.
like, news stories, and
Mhm.
it's just showing, like, what was happening in that era and really, the lack of surveillance or,
Right.
how
Yeah.
much how different it is now, the things
Yeah.
that they could get away with. And they
Yeah.
thought that this man was I can't remember, they think called him Hollywood or something because they thought he was so handsome and he was so
Okay.
charming, and he wasn't like a murderer, spoiler alert, but,
Okay.
it
I was
was
gonna
just
ask if anybody got hurt in this.
I mean, maybe some people got hurt, but it's not like and the movie Heat too was they took some inspiration from this
Okay.
man's, which that might be a spoiler if you've seen Heat.
Okay.
But after we watched this documentary, then of course Mark and I went and watched Point Break, which
Okay.
I have not rewatched
I've never
forever.
seen that movie.
Okay, well, and didn't remember it's directed by Catherine Bigelow,
Oh,
and I'm like,
cool.
"Oh, this is why there's so much female gaze and so much why, like, a lot of women that, like, we personally know love this movie and are obsessed with it." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, I see why." And
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, come on.
They're
So
looking good in that. That's like
so
prime time for
yeah,
them.
so that was just a little special feature of something that
Oh, that's
it makes a
nice.
fun double feature for an evening.
Does it inspire you to rob a bank?
No. And I'm not gonna name names,
Okay.
but I did have a bank robber in my family,
Oh.
and
Well, you can't just leave it there, you have
well,
to tell
it was a
more.
man who was married to my cousin. I don't know if he's
Okay.
alive or dead, but he did get arrested.
So there's not a Netflix documentary coming out about him because
I
he
mean,
wasn't very good
maybe
about
we
it?
should make it.
Oh, okay.
If I get permission, if I get family to
Um,
sign off.
I wanna know more about this tree house, though. That's actually the part I wanna
Oh,
know more
his
about.
he, like, lived in this lavish, place with ropes to swing on, and
Oh my
you would
gosh.
appreciate it. I mean,
I always
he was
wanted
very
to be
unserious in that way, you know?
Yeah, I always wanted, like, to live in the Swiss Family Robinson
Yeah.
house, you know? Like, I wanted, like, the really intensely huge tree
Yeah.
house with, like, all different rooms and, like,
No,
bridges
of
and stuff.
course.
That sounds very cool. That's what I would do if I
I
had money from
I would
robbing a
wanna live
bank.
there with Alexander Skarsgård's Tarzan.
Oh, that version? Yeah, that's
I
fair.
mean, as long as he can, like, speak and I can teach him to read and stuff, you know?
Is he wearing the loincloth?
Well, obviously. Do you have a special
Okay.
feature?
I do have a special feature. I was feeling kind of, like, guilty about this because I was like I really tried to, like, promote, like, more independent, lesser known authors, but I was like, we talk about, like, big films and stuff, so I'm just gonna talk about Stephen King."
Yes, tell
Because
us.
I just finished, his latest short story collection, and I was like, "I wanna talk about it, so I'm just gonna talk about it." Um, so it's called, You Like It Darker, and, his short story collections always have funky names, which I like,
Yeah,
and, um, it was just the 25th anniversary of, when he was hit, when he had his
car
road
accident, yeah.
accident. And I remember then, so that I was 16-ish. I remember then, like, there was talk of, like, he was never gonna write again.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and at that time, I was a huge Stephen King fan, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, like, he's never gonna write again, but at least, like, we have everything he's written until this point." I thought at the time, like, at least we have that. And I think about everything he's written since in the last 25
Oh my god.
years, and I'm so grateful
Yeah.
that, we have that, and not I'm not, somebody who's, like, gonna say everything he's written ever in the history of the world has been perfect, but I'm such a fan of the characters that he has created, the worlds he's created, the joy he's brought to me and so many people. And, you know, we obviously have gotten the chance to write a book about him, The Science of Stephen King. And to think about like 11/22/63, he's written that in the last
Yeah.
25 years, which I know is a favorite of
Well, and
yours.
and if you read our book, it's part biographical of what was
Mhm.
happening in his life at the time, and something that really struck us, no pun intended, was after his accident, he wanted to continue writing, but it was physically painful, so he
Mhm.
hand wrote Dreamcatcher,
Yeah.
and then Tabitha probably transcribed it.
Yeah.
But speaking of the patience to do
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
like in stop
Yeah.
motion, like, he needed to write, and thank God he did because we
Yeah.
have all of these stories that really continue to
Right.
shape us and the horror genre.
Well, and just thinking about and now, like, and I mean, it's sort of always been this way, but now, like, everything he writes gets turned into a film or a television
Yeah.
show still. Um, so anyway, this collection of short stories, and I was just talking about, when you were talking about the stop motion short film, I was just talking about my love of short stories, and I love horror short stories, and in part, Stephen King is a reason why. But also I've come to love, Poe and Shirley Jackson and many other horror short story writers. Um, One in particular short story stuck out to me in this book that I think you would love, and it is a sequel to Cujo,
Oh,
um, called Rattlesnakes, and it was my favorite short story in the book. And it is the story of the dad from Cujo now in 2024.
oh, wow.
And he's retired. And if you'll recall, in Cujo, the boy dies in the book.
Right.
And so it is now him in his 70s, and this new story. And obviously he's still grieving what happened and in that book. And there's a obviously it was to me the scariest story, and it was the most emotional. Well, I don't know if it was the most emotional actually, because I ended up crying
No, and you
at the
told me.
story. Yeah, I ended up crying at the story at the end of the book because Stephen King got me, because the end of the book is a basically he got me because it's basically it resonated. I won't get into what the story is about, but it was basically a story. Basically, what made me cry was Stephen King got to that human aspect of, he basically explained why things happen to everyone, um, and that he basically smacked me upside the head about why you have to deal with the shit you have to deal with.
Oh,
And Stephen King kind of is really good at smacking us
yeah.
upside the head. And there's so many great, amazing stories in there, and I think what I love, and I think what we loved about writing the Stephen King book, is that as he's gone through his life, he tells stories from his perspective as he's grown, and in this short story collection, so many of the stories are from his perspective as a 70-year-old man, and many of his characters in this book are from that perspective. And even though I'm not a 70-year-old man, I think I just really appreciate, as I've grown older, um, hearing him grow older and like his wisdom
Yeah,
and still scaring the pants off me.
of
So,
course.
I really recommend it to you and to anyone who is um a fan of Stephen King, but also short stories. And maybe even if you haven't read something of his in like 20, 30 years, like pick it up and you might be surprised.
Great.
Yeah.
I have a tiny it's like the red line of our conspiracy wall from our photo shoot,
Mhm.
but we were talking about Dreamcatcher, the movie
Mhm.
version. Donnie Wahlberg's in it, and I just saw him in New Kids on the Block the
Oh,
other day.
you did.
So,
What kind of things were you screaming at him?
unintelligible.
Who's like was he your new
He's my
kid?
man.
He was your man,
Yeah.
like, forever?
Yeah.
Donnie was, like, your
Yeah.
guy. You scream for him?
Like, when I see a woman in the crowd that says, like, "Donnie is my husband," or, like, there's T-shirts that say that, I'm like, "How dare you?" And I know, like, I don't believe any of that, but,
Yeah, but
it's
was
that,
always
like,
your guy,
"That's my
your
boyfriend." Yeah.
boy band guy. There
Yeah.
wasn't really, like, a boy band in my exact, because New Kids was just a tiny bit
Yeah,
before
before.
me,
And then NSYNC and
was a
Backstreet was a
tiny
tiny
bit
bit
after
after.
me, so, like, I just didn't get I
Yeah.
didn't get a good boy band,
Yeah, that's okay.
but, I
You're
survived.
okay. We did not talk about a trailer,
Oh,
2 weeks ago,
yes.
so we're gonna talk about 2 this week, bonus
Yes.
trailers.
Okay.
I made Meg watch the trailer for Wicked because I love musicals,
Yes.
and we wrote about Wicked in our
Yes.
book, The Science of Witchcraft.
Yes.
Meg, what I'm telling you is, obviously, there's music, obviously, there's dancing, obviously, there's this dynamic of seeing how she became the Wicked Witch,
Yeah.
quote unquote, of the West, and Glinda, the Good Witch. But when I tell you the romance is going to blow your mind, and I have never sobbed as much as I sobbed seeing this romance play out on stage, and I was not sitting close, and to see it now on the screen,
Oh.
you're gonna love it. You're gonna ship some people.
Okay, I'm excited. I know nothing about Wicked.
Okay.
I, like, literally know
It's
nothing.
like, yeah, the prequel to Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, I know that.
Okay. I literally
I
know
guess I shouldn't have
nothing.
said nothing. I loved Wizard of Oz when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's about where my,
Okay.
like, I saw The Wiz when I was a kid. It scared me a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
Return to Oz was very terrifying.
yeah, yeah.
Farouja Ball.
Oh, Return to Oz. I think that's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Farouja Ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant.
The Wiz is
And
the musical. Yeah.
yeah, The Wiz. I don't know if I saw that one. And I know that Wicked exists. I know that, like, Christian Chenoweth was in it or something
Yeah.
on Broadway or something.
And Adina Menzel.
Yep. And I watched the trailer.
Are you going to watch it with me?
I will watch it with
Okay.
you.
I know you're not going to
Um,
run out and see it, but
Well, I'll watch it with you.
Okay.
But it's just I don't have any. Is there like scary stuff in it?
it's about witches, Meg.
Okay.
It's about witchcraft. It's about animal rights. It's about
Oh.
romance. It's about feminism.
Animal
It's
rights.
it's about friendship. It's
Okay.
about bringing down the patriarchy.
Oh, well, I
And
like
as you
that.
saw at the end, she's just like,
Ooh.
the wizard should
What's
be
that
scared
actress?
of me.
Who's that actress?
Holly from, not Holly, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Cynthia
Erivo.
Erivo.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and Ariana Grande.
Yeah, and Jeff
Grande.
Goldblum as the
Oh, I
the
did like
wizard.
I did like seeing Jeff Goldblum.
And Bowen.
Yang. I saw
love
him. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something where I wouldn't.
No, and I
know.
only went I wasn't even like, I have to see Wicked, the musical. I went to it because, like,
Well, no,
there were
you're
rush
yeah.
tickets and, again,
No,
Campbell.
you don't have to. You're
No,
the musical queen.
But so what I'm saying is, it surprised me that I loved it.
Yeah.
And because of the storytelling. It's not like, there's some bops in it, but it's about, especially this romance.
Okay. They barely showed the romance in the trailer. Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know I love a romance.
And now going the opposite end of that, another trailer I made you watch, Heretic with
now that
Hugh Grant.
That is my kind of trailer.
So talk people through what you saw.
Okay. So these two girls are like, one of them is from Yellow Jackets, which I haven't finished watching. I need to catch up on that, side note. But they are like going to door Mormons, which I don't think girls do that, side note, but whatever. Anyway, and they go to Hugh Grant's house. And he seems all nice.
And they're like, we can't come in unless a woman is present. He's like, oh, my wife is here. Does that count? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah. And then everything seems all nice, but it's A24 and you could feel the dread.
And it's like he's locked them in, and now they have to go through this escape room, basically, of belief or disbelief, and he's going to test their faith.
Yeah.
And probably some other things.
No, it looks really scary. I got scared.
No, it's terrifying. Like, first of all, just being anybody, but a teenage girl locked in a strange man's house, and he's making you
like do a maze or something. It looked really upsetting, and
so
I can't wait. It looked I think it's coming out in the fall. Is what I heard.
So we'll go see that too.
Oh yeah, no, that looked more. That
I know
looked
it's more up your
no,
alley.
I mean, Wicked, I know I'm gonna enjoy that, but Heretic was something more, like, for me like, that was made more for
Oh, yeah.
my gaze.
Absolutely.
And Hugh Grant is not somebody who I think the casting is very inspired because he's not somebody who, like,
You wouldn't cast him as a
opens the
bad guy.
door and you're like you
Yeah,
would feel
scary.
very safe.
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
that was very good casting.
It's going against type,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that makes it even scarier.
Yeah, so that was really cool. So don't forget that we have our Patreon going. We're talking X-Files over there.
And, oh, yeah, we're gonna have a poll in this to talk about what constitutes a rewind or not. So
Yeah. What is old enough to be a rewind and what's fresh enough to be a fast forward?
so check us out on social media, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Horror Rewind.
To stay up to date on all our ghoulish happenings, you can visit our website down in the show notes.
Make sure to check to see if we are lurking through your town on our upcoming book tour or events.
You can also stalk us on YouTube and Patreon and all of your favorite social media platforms.
Thanks for listening to Horror Rewind. We'll see you in the horror section.